I'm Joey Tedesco, and you're watching the Cartoon Palooza. So let's not waste any time. Last week I talked about the stinkers of 2014. This week, we get to the cream of the crop. Oh, Maron, these are the films we'll be talking about years to come. Here are the best animated films, widely released, mainstream films of 2014. I think this was a bold choice for a studio who's mainly worked with horror-themed animated films to suddenly go into a more comedic route. That film, The Boxtrolls. It's entertaining, as it has all the elements from the studio's previous work. Okay, if there's one element that this movie didn't do as well as Leica's previous films, was have an interesting and relatable protagonist. In this film, Eggs the hero came across as basically the fish out of water character trying to either fix his world or go back to it. If anything, there's more to appreciate about this film than to actually enjoy or watch again. Particularly the villain. While I thought the villain was very entertaining, along with his cronies with some of the funniest dialogue in the film, I couldn't help but think, with all this funny characterizations and quirks with these guys, why can't we get some of that with the heroes and the actual box trolls? Okay, I'll clarify. There's one character played by Elle Fanning that had an interesting funny personality that you rarely see from a female lead in an animated family film, but it still feels out of balance with the rest of the characters. What the film does make up in, not surprisingly, is the stop motion animation. This is some of the best stop motion I have seen since the studio's last effort, especially since they're improving on the 3D printing process that allows the animators a variety of expressions on the characters' faces. For what I saw, I might not be seeing this again anytime soon, but I didn't feel as if I wasted my time. I put this one lower on the list because, as much as I was anticipating to see this film, I think I was a little bit confused. Regardless, it was still a good movie. That film, Big Hero 6. Don't get me wrong, I found this movie to be entertaining, but I'd be lying if I said I enjoyed it as much as Tangled, Frozen, or even Wreck-It Ralph. The confusion comes from the film's genre. It feels like it was trying to appeal to the Japanese anime crowd, the mainstream Disney one, and the Marvel Studio audience all in one. Don't get me wrong, I find it entertaining to see these tropes you find in a Marvel comic or a Disney cartoon since both were such influences on me as a child, but after a while, you could see the story's beats, all the while the action, as far as Disney films go, was not nearly as good as a lot of the actions I've seen in their previous films. Heck, Robin Hood had some of my favorite action sequences in an animated movie, and that's considering to be one of the studio's cheapest bombs. But what does make this film work are a few developed characters and animation. Specifically the character Baymax. I applaud the animators and voice actors for being able to translate this character with limited expressions to be one of the funniest and heartwarming sidekicks of this year. You know, despite the fact that he can warm up your heart like a heated blanket. So for what it's worth, Big Hero 6 was an entertaining film that had its share of problems, and it's clear with the next selection that the action was nowhere near as good as it could be. I'd say give it a watch, but don't expect to be blown away. I've noticed a lot of people say that this was their favorite animated film of 2014. While I may not agree with it, I can sympathize with them and see where they're coming from. That film? How to Train Your Dragon 2. I already mentioned how this first film grew on me the more I watched it on television, so when the sequel did come out, I was looking forward to see where they would go with these characters and story. Well, when you discount the standard television companion series, what I did get to see was definitely an improvement. What the first film felt like exposition to a bigger world that could arguably have ended right there, the second film felt appropriately made for the sake of good storytelling, and not just a cash grab like the studio's other efforts. We get better designs, better characters, and more drama thrown into the mix. Specifically Cate Blanchett playing Toothless Mom. While some of the elements did feel like they're pandering to the geek crowd to the point where it feels a little forced, it was still handled relatively well. The biggest problem that I felt this movie suffers from is near the end, where the big emotional scene that changes a lot where the story is going wasn't given the weight it deserved. Not to spoil much, but it's suddenly followed with the traditional climactic battle we've seen in other movies. It was the last third of the movie that honestly took what was the first two-thirds, did so well and spectacular, and kinda dropped the ball. Which is to say it's not a bad movie, it's just not my favorite in comparison to the other films I saw. Now this is where we come to the two mainstream animated films that completely blew me away. Here are the films that I'm probably going to be watching over and over again on DVD or Blu-ray. Starting off with The Book of Life. I'm not even sure why I was going to rank this film that high. However, if I had to be completely honest with myself, I would feel wrong to not give this film the praise it deserves. Not only is this one of the most original family films to come out, but it has one of the most creative premises that makes it quite a fun holiday film, as one that raises cultural awareness to, say, the average American family. The only problem I had about this film is that there's one or two plot holes that could work against the story, as well as some characters that have been done to death before. Specifically, the feisty princess that claims to be a strong independent individual, but ends up being saved by a man regardless. However, the film does make up in stories and visuals. I love this film's approach to creating a world revolving around Mexican culture and cartoon humor. This movie had some of the best visual Easter eggs to traditional Mexican iconography in a family film, as well as some generally funny slapstick. Which is to say the movie isn't just fun and games, there is emotional weight to it that does help the movie feel more balanced and somewhat endearing. There's a scene where a character talks about finding acceptance in one's heart when it's filled with constant hatred that it actually made me tear a little. One of those things that I look back and hope it wasn't me being suckered into smolts, but something that felt pretty genuine. The movie was the director's 14-year passion project, and for what I saw, it was not disappointing. Now before I go to the best animated film of 2014, let me go ahead with the honorable mentions that I just didn't know where else to put. Starting off with The Wind Rises. For Miyazaki's last film, it was definitely a joy to watch. However, the movie was originally released in 2013, and it was only given a limited theatrical release for the States for only AMC theaters. Therefore, it didn't really make the qualifications. Peabody and Sherman was interesting that it sits right in the middle between being on both lists. It's not great, neither is it terrible, just eh. Here it is, folks. The best animated film of 2014. When I first saw this film in February, I knew that the standard was going to be set high. And with that film, all I gotta say, yeah, everything is awesome. I can't stress how much I enjoy this film. When I'm simply talking about it, it's a reminder to get me off my ass to see it again. This is the kind of film that doesn't skimp out on the ingredients. Some films I watch makes me wonder how it could have been better if they put 100% into it. This film puts in 110. It's the kind of film that took my expectations and obliterated it. What could have easily been an hour-and-a-half commercial to sell toys ended up being a clever satire on the science fiction action genres, specifically the ones that deal with alternate realities and the hero's journey. It's gotten to the point where it feels like a postmodern animated masterpiece. What's more fascinating is how it doesn't feel like it's trying to market something, and it feels like a genuine passion project. No major studio would want to make their animated film with unexpressive characters and clunky animation. In a day and age where we expect to see the generic animated film, the Lego Movie is anything but generic. It works so much better knowing that at its core, animation is an illusion of life. Therefore, using animation to tell the story is a clever and inventive way to get their message across without seeming forced. When I watch an animated film, it's hard to find one that truly mystifies me with the way it's put together. Imagine the joy of discovering a computer with a touchscreen in your hands for the first time. Imagine what it was like to feel blown away by that sheer presentation. That's the feeling I had watching this film, especially since most computer animation can look the same after a while. This film didn't just end up making the top of my list, it blew me away as a moviegoer and set a standard for movies of this genre to reach. So to say this movie is awesome is an understatement. This movie is spectacular. Quite honestly, the best animated movie all year. So what are your thoughts? What ended up being your favorite animated film of 2014? Now I'm Joey.T.Cartoon.P, wishing you a happy new year. And honestly, hopefully we'll get some good films like last year. Unless my most anticipated film of 2015 happens to blow chunks, then I might be a little disappointed. But hey, Pixar's coming out with a new movie, so I can't complain. Now I'm Joey.T.Cartoon.P, and thanks for watching this countdown on the Cartoon Palooza.